Hey, welcome back. My name is Elevator. My puppy on the floor over there is Diggy Smalls. And today we're going to talk about Sister Wives, Season 20, Episode 4, entitled You Need to Shut Up. It says, the episode description says, Meri ventures into the world of dating apps and Kody struggles to fake it about the new family dynamic as he and Robyn pack up their home. All right, let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, Sister Wives, a red flag rewatch. This is the podcast for disenchanted fans of Sister Wives, fans who fell in love with the Brown family, watched their precious kids grow up, and became enchanted with all the love, only to be told it was all a lie. Nothing was as it seemed. We were bamboozled, fooled, duped, tricked, conned, swindled, hoodwinked. What did we miss? Where did it go wrong? Come help me find out as we watch from the beginning. Meri is visiting Jen at her bike shop. She says, so Zona and I are out for a walk and we just wanted to walk over to Jen's bike shop and just check in and say hi. Jen says, my husband and I bought a building last year and renovated it and turned it into a bike and RC shop. And Meri says it kind of feels like it's the new hopping place to be in Little Parowan. Jen said, yes, it's actually a fun place to be. And Meri says to her husband, Sean, well, Sean, I got to talk to your wife about some serious stuff. And she says, we're going to be talking about guys. I need her opinion. And Jen says only one of us is looking. And Meri says she's not looking. She's semi-happy with you. On the wall in the back, it says it's 1:59 in the afternoon on December the 19th. Thought that was interesting. Also in the bike shop, there is paintball supplies. I bet it is a fun place to be. And with it being December, I bet you they kind of did pretty well because bikes and RC cars and paintball stuff, those are good Christmas presents. I hope she's doing well with that. It's always nice when people have like a hobby and they turn it into a way to support themselves. I hope they're doing well with that. And I'm not going to talk about everything they said, but basically Meri is on some apps and she says she's talking to about 6 different guys and she's trying to see who she clicks with and she's got rules and they're going through the apps and they're talking about speed dating. She says she's been speaking to Ron, the guy that she met at the speed date we saw, and they've been talking, and then she tells the producer that's all you get. So she doesn't share anything else. But she does say, I don't know, I feel like dating apps are stupid. Either that or most of the men on them are stupid. And Jen says, I feel like it's both. And then it cuts over to Robyn. Robyn says, oh no, I can't even imagine dating through an app on a phone. That sounds so disconnected. Would you even find anybody who is very serious on there to date? Are they dating or are they just looking for a hookup? And that's weird that Robyn said that. She's always so shy and pretty. I don't think hookup would be in her vocabulary, but she said it. Christine says, the problem that I ran into the apps is that in the one that I did, there's swingers on the apps. And there's also open marriages, open relationships, and I wasn't into that. I did that whole polygamy thing already. Oh, I'm strictly going to be a monogamist. And they're like, too bad, we could have had a lot of fun. And she's like, okay. Janelle says, you will never see me on a dating app. Personally, I just don't see how that would ever work out for me. Kody, in his dramatic tone, he goes, going through a dating app, how do you get anything on the real essence of a person without meeting them? And I'm looking at Kody and I'm thinking, I wonder if he feels bad that Meri's having to go through this because he kind of took the best years of her life and then he strung her along for the last 10 years when she could have been looking for somebody else and it would have been easier for her to find somebody else. And so they're looking at some guys and they decide that 15 to 20 years younger would make you a cougar, which everybody knows what a cougar is. It's like an older woman that goes after younger men, which if she wants to do that, she can do that. But I think what makes you a cougar is if you could actually be their mother. So yeah, 15 plus years. Meri says it's very important that a guy knows what to do with his hair. Like if it's long and curly or whatever, and you know what to do with it, great. And they look at each other and they have hysterical laughter. And Meri acts like she didn't mean to say that. That was all an accident. I don't think that was an accident. I think she was totally talking about Kody. And it shows Michael and Kody and Robyn are packing. And Robyn's over there folding teeny tiny clothes, little tiny clothes. I'm wondering if it's not baby doll dresses. Who knows? I don't know. And Kody goes into the whole buying and selling of houses like we don't know how buying and selling of houses works. And he says, we bought a house. There was contingent on this house selling and we've sold it now. We just got to get out of the house. So it's a big rush of packing and moving. And you know what's funny about this is that I don't know where to find it, but I watch everything through Discovery Plus or HBO. I'm having to do Discovery Plus now because HBO dropped a few seasons of Sister Wives. I think they did that on purpose, so I would have to buy Discovery Plus. But I don't have TLC, but apparently somewhere there's some scenes that were deleted called More to Love. And there's this girl, she's on Senior Perspectives. That's the name of her podcast, Senior Perspectives. And she was talking about these missing scenes. And it said on there that after Kody and Robyn sold their house, the buyer's inspectors came through and found a lot of problems. They had to get a remediation team. They had to get a plumber. They had to get a tile guys. I mean, just thousands of dollars worth of stuff that had to be done. And I think that's why Kody said that thing he said about the selling has been real amicable. Because I think the buyer was real understanding. Then he said on the deleted scene that he was trusting Kody in good faith to make sure this job gets done. So I think Kody was hoping to sell that house without doing anything. And now he's joking about it and says, well, I got to stick around because the buyer said I had to do things in good faith. And I'll put them up on my YouTube video, but one of their bathrooms is wrecked. They're redoing the tile in the ceiling and redoing the tiling in the floor. And their entryway is knocked down to the studs. When you look at what remediation team means, primarily that means that somebody has to come through and get rid of mold, which is very interesting. I mean, as much as Robyn worries about Saul's lungs and they're living with mold that requires a remediation team to come fix by tearing out drywall, remediation teams deal with biohazard. So what was going on in that house? And so now they're moving from this house with the mold over to the McMansion 2.0, which has silica and radon poisoning from the mine that's less than a mile away. These people, as much as they were worried about COVID, they weren't worried about the mold in the house and the air quality at their brand new house. They're not worried about that, but they were ride or die on the COVID. It doesn't make any sense. And I wonder if maybe, when Kody was cutting down them trees and he accidentally landed one on the house and they had to get this big loan out on the house to fix it, I wonder if that wasn't part of the damage that he did. Because it looks like the ceiling in the bathroom they're having to fix. I wonder if the tree didn't land somewhere in that general vicinity and they're having to fix it. But I wish they would talk about Kody dropping a tree on his house. They talked about Kody dropping a tree on a truck. And he thought that was hilarious. And it's not funny. It's stupid. You need to stop that. That's ridiculous. Anyway, it shows Michael and Kody and Robyn are packing. And he says, we're buying a house that was contingent on this house selling. We've sold it now. And Janelle says, I've not heard officially, but I've been reading on social media that Kody and Robyn have a new house. I wondered if this move would affect the sale of the property. I mean, from what I'm hearing, it's a good-sized mortgage. He's going to need the cash. That might even be better or worse, depending on if he's going to still continue to be fair. That's what I worry about because I think he's going to need more cash. He might get a little greedy. And she's got a good point. And she didn't really mention here that she is the one who put in a couple $100,000 on that McMansion that they're selling. And she's not mentioning that she's not getting any money back from that. And so I'm sure she's pretty upset with that. She's probably just accepted that that's not going to happen. She's not going to get her money. And I'm not going to read it word for word, but Kody starts saying that he stinks and he can smell his own pheromones. And he asks Robyn to come smelling. And that's all I can say about that. He thinks it's sexy and Robyn does not think it's sexy. Kody introduces his brother. He says, Michael's my youngest brother. He's the youngest out of 10. Michael and I are literally a generation apart, like 19 years and 8 months. And they're moving the couch, and there's a bunch of toys that are falling through the couch. Robyn comes over, and she sweeps them up. Robyn says, there was such a big family culture of no affection that when it came to anything public, I would just shy away from flirting with him. Now I'm kind of have to get comfortable with it. And it's just bugging me, and it's got to be bugging y'all that they're acting like all this is brand new. He has been at her house 90% of the time since 2010 when they got married. So she's acting like everything they're doing now is brand new. And everybody's been gone for years, years, you know? They've been living separate. He's been staying with Robyn. I don't know why they're acting like this whole situation is brand new. I don't understand why they keep sticking to that point. And Kody says, I've always been comfortable flirting with Robyn. I think it's just going to take time for Robyn to get used to this monogamy thing. Oh my God, shut up about that. Y'all been monogamous for 15 years. And eventually it will be where, like, listen, I want to be walking down the street with her someday, maybe in a shopping mall or something, and have her just slap my ass. That's when I know she's comfortable. How many couples do you know that walk down the mall and slapping each other's asses? That's not normal, Kody. People don't normally do that. Then it moves on to Christine's house, and it shows Peyton making lunch in Christine's kitchen, and she is folding towels, and they are talking. I think maybe Peyton has been staying with her because he said, while they're hugging. I've enjoyed being here the last few months. Christine says Peyton is moving to North Carolina. It's actually rubbish. Why? Why does he need to move as well? It's hard that my kids don't want to live close to me. Yeah, absolutely. What is about North Carolina that has people moving there? It's insane. I think maybe they're moving to North Carolina because that is where Janelle is and Maddie is. I think in my mind, McKelty and Peyton are moving over there because they know if there's any future in Sister Wives, it's going to be with them. So if there's any future in the show, they are always going to be in it. They're trying to stick with them and be with them. I think it's a good idea. I mean, like if Maddie was my sister and she was opening up this huge farm and everybody was having kids, it would be good to be over there. So I'm happy for him. I think they should all move over there. Far away from Arizona as possible. They say Garrison got into the Arizona Guard right before he died, and Christine says she didn't know that, which is odd because his funeral was a Guard funeral organized by the National Guard, and it was March 24th, 2024. They go on to say that Garrison and Peyton joined the military together, and Peyton might sign on with the Guard in North Carolina. Christine says one of the best things about plural marriage is what I wanted most from my kids was to have a relationship with me and other moms. And so I've got Peyton, who is close to Janelle. She's someone that I trust. I trust her influence on Peyton. I feel like a crappy mom because they're not choosing to live next to me. Sometimes I feel like Janelle is the better mom because they're choosing to live next to her. She tells Peyton, I think it's good for you to move away for a while. Peyton says, you know how Maddie knows me pretty well? Yeah, one of her arguments was, you can be here with me and Caleb and Savannah and my mom, and there's Christian girls who I go to church with. And she was like, hey, by the way, I go to a church over here and I think you'd really enjoy that. And I'm like, wow, Maddie, that sounds perfect and wonderful. Women are perfect. Peyton says, to Christine, you haven't been sick of me so far. I really want to have a massive change. I want something else completely different than what I've had. I hate being away from family and knowing that there's family there and it's a family that's calling me there, and that's just perfect. Then it goes to Meri and Jen, and she's still swiping. They say a few things about the people that they're looking at. And she says, I'm not a hussy for talking to 6 guys, because she's been brought up in the ways of you don't date unless you plan to marry that person. So now she's having to date random guys that she just met because she doesn't have many options. And so that probably does make her feel like a hussy. But Jen points out, what does that make polygamy men? If it makes you a hussy, what does it make polygamy men? Just because you're talking to 6 guys. And men marry multiple women. So what does that make men? It doesn't make her a hussy. Kody's talking about his past relationship with Meri. He says, first, I'm hanging out with Meri. It wasn't really a date. We were just hanging out with a bunch of peers. Like, I flirt with her a lot. I guess I had that part of life down. I could flirt. Maybe Meri's mom and dad were like clinchers in this relationship. There was an attraction to this experience, this family. It was just the two of them married. So he's talking about he was dating Meri and he liked her parents. This certain episode, he had some real daddy issues. Like, he had problems with his father, and I think that is affecting him greatly. And I think Meri's parents were nice, and he was trying to get in good with them because I think he didn't have a very good relationship, because he even says on here that his dad was mean. Then Meri says back then Kody was different than he is now. He had a light in his eyes, and he was very kind, and he was very charismatic. I don't doubt that there is still goodness in Kody. I just haven't seen it for a really long time, like directed at me. I think there's something he's trying to cover up. I don't know. I don't know. I can't say. I used to know him. She's saying that he's changed. You can tell. I just got through covering season 1, and he had a real light in his eyes, and he had a bond with his children, and he was selfish then, but he wasn't nearly as selfish as he is now. So he has changed. Meri says to date her is like a privilege. It's a privilege to be in my space. Like, I don't mean like in a rude way. I just don't think everyone gets to have access to me. I don't think anybody should let anybody in the world have access to them. You really want to have people in your world and in your space that align with who you are as a person and that brings you energy and doesn't drain you. And then it shows Meri leaving, and it's now 3:03 p.m. So they talked for about an hour. Then it goes to Christine and David, and they're taking a walk. And Christine is complaining because something still has her last name as Brown on there, and she makes a comment to David like, she's done told everybody her last name is not Brown anymore. Why does it still say Brown? And David says, my name is Muerte. And Christine says, David has mentioned before that his name should be Muerte. What does Muerte mean? And the producer shows her and on her phone and says it means death. And she says, Muerte means death? That's his nickname. It's crazy. He must not know what that means. I guess it was in 1993, Undercover Blues came out. A lot of people don't know about that movie. So I'm going to play y'all a clip for you uncultured swine who do not know who Muerte is. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to play.
My name is Muerte. Don't you?
So it's this bad guy. It is played by Stanley Tucci. He's horrible at being a bad guy, just horrible at it. He just gets his butt kicked every time he tries to rob somebody. He says, my name is Muerte, and don't you forget it. I really believe that's what David is referring to here is the Undercover Blues movie. I just think people do not get David. I think he's hilarious, and he's just got this hidden knowledge about old movies, and he brings it up every now and then, and nobody understands what he's saying, but that's what he means when he says, my name is Muerte. Anyway, and David asks Christine, so are you missing Peyton? Are you just missing them all? David says, we had fun with him for a few months. That was way too short, which makes me think that Peyton was living with him for a little while. Christine's talking about how Peyton just moved to North Carolina and how she married David. And she had this huge full experience, and now half the kids are leaving. And Christine says, I just feel like I might be a bad mom. And she said she was talking to Janelle, and Janelle said, I have all the grandkids. I was thinking in my head, you need to shut up right now. And this is where the title of the show came in. There was a moment when I felt like slapping her. How could she say that she gets all the grandkids now? I don't think she's really that upset with Janelle. David asks, how are things with Janelle? Christine says, we talk business stuff and then we talk about business separating, and there's been a lot of change within the last couple of months. We used to run it together, really used to run life together. We used to do everything together, and we raised our kids together, and it's just one more step away from each other where she's going to branch off and work on her farm. And I know that I hurt her feelings a little bit. We're doing things more separate now, and it's just I want to be more in charge of my business. David says, you guys are getting competitive. I like that. And Christine said, they're just trying to support each other too. Good competition is good. We learn how to do things together, and now it's almost like we're learning how to do things apart, but it's okay because you know you have to move on. Other people have said that what she's discussing here is plexus, and that they're no longer partners in the plexus business, that they're separating. I don't know if maybe Janelle is not as interested anymore or what's happening here. Imagine Janelle is probably working with Maddie more on this. Something that you start out together with a friend and then you branch off and do something different, especially now that Janelle's so far away and she has a daughter that's in the same business. So I can understand why they're probably separating. I don't think it's anything malicious or mean or even a story behind it. I think it's just moving on. Kody's in the kitchen with Michael. She says, well, gosh, man, my head is spinning. I don't even know where to start. Last day of packing today. Got to get out of the house. He said, yeah, Michael's leaving tomorrow. I hope he's okay. I guess because they probably worked him to death. He says, I appreciate you being here. And they are drinking something in mugs and they say, cheers. Here's to a new house. Here's to a new house. Michael says, yeah, by the way, why are you moving? What gives? I really like this house. Kody says, I'll be really honest with you. It's just the pain and the experience of living here through COVID and through breakups. Robyn and I have lived in Flagstaff for 6 years. The last 5 years have been in this house, and my family has just eroded, crumbled, and moved on. Then he looks at the camera and says, you haven't seen Jack for what happened. Probably because he wouldn't let the world see what happened. Told him not to show it. It was a very, very painful experience. I know that there is some missing video of him and Garrison not get along, because I wonder what arguments went down that were recorded and then pulled after Garrison's death. I totally understand why they would do that, but I think that's maybe what he's referring to when he says you haven't seen Jack for what happened. He doesn't seem to be taking any accountability for that. He just says it was a very, very painful experience. Kody's telling Michael there was such a want for change in my environment, and that's just from pain. That's just something to do with trauma, emotional trauma. And it was right when Robyn finally sort of had an epiphany when she went, I'm done with Coyote Pass. But the epiphany was they want a new house and they need to get this house sold so they can move to the new house, put everything in a trust, and have everything in their name. So they had to sell Coyote Pass. Michael says, how does she like being the only wife? Kody says, Robyn struggled with the whole thing. I mean, she'd married me under the premise of plural marriage with the expectation of plural marriage. When the others left, I wondered if my value to her was diminished. I'm still wondering. Robyn says, yeah, sure, being an only wife is great in some ways, but there's also ways that it's not great. This was not the life that I expected and not the life I planned for myself. And while I love Kody, I never intended or expected to want to have him by myself. I always wanted to live plural marriage. I wanted to live my religion. Kody says, we made our covenant on the basis of polygamy. Michael says, yeah, you started out that way because, I mean, I remember growing up, you were the coolest polygamist I knew, and now you're not. And Kody says, I'm not a polygamist at all, you know, because there's a reality of struggle in polygamy that you don't understand unless you're in it. Robyn's still hung up here. She's still like, we could have done this. You have to deny sort of what your wives feel about it. Plural marriage is so hard. We're like faking through it. And he does this little play acting of being happy and with his weird grin and talking about how he just faked all of it. So it's like other polygamists are watching and they're seeing this and they're going, holy crap, you're just dissolving your whole family and you've really botched it. You're such a failure. And there's an irony here because Christine told me 15 years ago she hated polygamy and I just didn't know what to do with it. It was a shock to me. I just sort of shook it off and in a sense, ignored it. So she told you 15 years ago she hated polygamy. Let's all sit and think about what happened 15 years ago. What happened 15 years ago? That was 2010. And what happened in 2010? Robyn married Kody when Christine told you she hated polygamy. He says, the biggest mistake I made with divorce, Christine is leaving, it made me feel like a victim. It was extremely aggressive, but I believe that she needed to do that in order to rip the Band-Aid off. She needed that, but it made me so angry, I still can't talk to her. Still don't want to say her name. I want to forget she existed, and yet I've got to interact with her kids. Michael says, her kids? Your kids? You mean? He's like, yeah. I want to interact with our kids. So that tells you right there. He just blew it right there because that's how he totally thinks about it. I got so bitter with everything, with how it all went down. I just want to move off of that. You know, she's found her soulmate. She's happy as can be, and I want her to be in that space. But if she's really happy, then she really needs to get over what happened and be able to be cool about it all, which is still hypocritical of me. I recognize it because I'm happy with Robyn, but Robyn and I are still bitter about the failure of this experience. I was a believer. He says, I want her to be able to be cool about it all. To just go, oh, well, I forgive you. It's fine. Everything's fine. He robbed them blind and stole 15 years of their lives, but you need to be cool about it. Just be cool, man. Okay. Michael says, not just you, but I thought there was other polygamists that I was seeing that were happy maybe. Kody says, I don't think none of them are. It's a lonely world, and I just don't really know quite why Robyn is still holding on to it. In a sense, I drive by Christine's house every single day. I drive past Coyote Pass every single day. I don't think a lot of people realize this, but when he says that he has to drive past Christine's, it's not because he wants to. It's because that's the only way out of his neighborhood. It's down the road that Christine used to live on, and he passes by Coyote Pass because they live right on Coyote Pass, right next to it. A lot of people are saying, well, why is he driving past her house? Well, he has to. They live like 2 miles away from each other, which makes it even worse that he wouldn't go over and see her when she lived right down the road. But anyway, he says that this home is the last memories of our family during the breakup, our last Christmas together, our last Thanksgiving together is all here. And the bitterness was already beginning. Then I do not miss the drama of that kind of insecurity. He's saying this house is full of bad memories. He ain't mentioning the house is full of mold. And there's tile work that has to be done and a remediation team and drywall people. If he was really friends with David, I bet you David would have cut him a deal on some drywall, but nah. That's not going to work. This next part is what I think the future of Sister Wives could be. It's just them doing stuff together. I think that's real interesting. And Janelle says, so the holiday season is here and everybody's starting to gather here in North Carolina. Even people that live far away are coming. So one thing, when you have a big family, it's really hard to coordinate schedules. And everybody's got a lot of plans, so we're getting together early this year. And I think that's a good idea. When you have a big family, getting together on Christmas Day needs to not be a priority because people have their own families. The husband has a family and the wife has a family. And how do you pick which family? I've never been able to do things on a holiday. My family would just do things when I was off of work. I don't understand the fact that it has to be Christmas Day. You remember when Kody was so upset because they were wanting to get together with him after Christmas? They were going to do Christmas at a B&B with Janelle and Christine. Their kids were going to get together, and then they were going to get together with Kody after Christmas. And Kody didn't like that. People with large families need to change their perspective. Christmas Day doesn't have to be Christmas Day. It's the fact that you're all getting together. So whether it's a week ahead or a week after, I've always liked doing Christmas after Christmas because then that's when you could do all the after Christmas sales and you could get really good gifts. So the fact that they're doing Christmas Day early, that's a great idea. It's better to do it where you can all get together at the same time than just halfway do it on the day of, you know. Janelle says, so the holiday season is here and everybody's starting to gather here in North Carolina. Even people that live far away are coming. So one thing, when you have a big family, it's really hard to coordinate schedules and everybody's got a lot of plans. So we're getting together early this year. Peyton says, I've just moved to North Carolina from Utah and we've just got here at the property and we're going to cut down a Christmas tree from somewhere. And the kids are jumping out of the car and they're talking to Janelle. Hi, Grandma. And Janelle says, hi, Evie. Maddie says, I think it's a cool idea to cut down a tree on our own. I understand it. I'm like, I don't know. It's cool. It's fun. I like the idea. I'm just pregnant and I have a 2-year-old. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot. So she's probably really tired, really tired. She just got drug out to the middle of her 160-acre land to look for a Christmas tree. But I can understand that. She's just not into it, but I'm glad she's there. Janelle says, all right, like, why not? We have all these trees. We don't have to pay for them. Kelty says, what's the timeline on Tata Farms? Janelle says, yeah, we get our permits in for the property so we can plant. And it sits in limbo in the bureaucracy. Everybody's waiting on the other agency and they need something or they don't know. It's in the pile and we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. Maddie says we even put a rush on it with the county at the beginning of October and they said 2 weeks. Janelle says we have lost our entire fall season. Like we were going to be planted this fall. I had no idea this year. I thought this was going to be very different. I thought we were going to move forward with the property and we would have sold Coyote Pass and we would all agreed. We'd all signed this paperwork. It's been a really completely frustrating year into these parts of my life. I can't get any traction. We're all just sitting here. Maddie says, okay, Axel, we're going to go find a tree. And they've got a lot of pine trees. But the thing about pine trees, in order for them to be a good Christmas tree, you got to catch them just right. All of her pine trees look like they've been out there a couple of years. So they're tall. The limbs are just too big and they're kind of spindly. They're not very full like regular pine trees. They don't have any small pine trees. So they end up cutting a bigger tree down and then like cutting it in half, which is fine. They've got a ton of them and they've got to clear some of that land anyway, so it's not hurting anything. I understand her about the permits because getting anything done, what you need is some kind of person to do that for you, that knows the ins and outs of how to get permits, like some sort of contractor. I know my husband and I built a big metal building that he could house his tractor and all of his tools and stuff in, and it was pretty big. And we had to go get permits just for that. And just figuring out the right thing to do for that. They wanted to know if it was going to be built on concrete, if it was going to be built on dirt. They wanted to know how big it was. They wanted to know about HOA policies. They wanted to know all this other stuff. So it is not easy to get things done. When I finally figured out where to go, what to do, and the answers to all the questions, I get down there and there's a big old sign that says, we only take cash at the courthouse. Talking to the lady, I said, I don't have cash. I just have my debit card. And they said, well, we close in about 15 minutes. Can you get to your bank and come back? So my husband works at a bank, and I said, meet me in the parking lot with $50 so I don't have to get out, so I can go get this permit. I mean, it is not easy. I can't imagine how many permits they have to go through. I bet it's a lot. Caleb goes into the woods a little bit, and Maddie's discussing how to chop it. And Caleb says, I got a chainsaw, so I'm going to chop it away, baby. And he does a good job. All the kids yell, timber, which is so sweet. That's funny. Caleb does a good job with the chainsaw. The tree doesn't land on anything, doesn't land on any trucks or any houses. Meri tells a story. So at one point, we were living in Montana, and he was cutting down a tree, maybe a few trees. I don't even know anyway. So we're up in the mountains, and I parked my truck in a certain place. I said, that tree is going to fall on the truck. Kody said, no, it's not. Meri says, I'm pretty sure. And he's like, no, it'll be fine. So he does this thing, and he cuts the little wedge in it, and it starts falling. And then he realizes. Kody says, so yeah, I cut it down. It falls on the truck. You think he would learn. And Janelle says, so this is the first tree we've actually cut down on our property. Payton's here. Savannah's here. It feels like, wow, we're actually a family. Like the whole family's here. She says, Garrison's not going to be here this year. It's a very strange year. Lots of new things, lots of new beginnings, and then some sad things too. Kody says, Michael grew up in plural marriage. Our dad had 3 wives. I'm pretty sure his whole life Michael's been expecting to be in plural marriage. He says to Michael, I've been talking you out of plural marriage for a while. What are your thoughts on that? Michael says, no, he's never living plural marriage. This is one thing, maybe y'all could tell me, but his dad, they mention over and over that he had 3 wives, and I only know of 2 of them. And I think he had 2 wives when he met Janelle's mother, and that was his 3rd wife. I think. I don't know. They don't talk about where the 2nd or 3rd wife came from. You only ever see his mom and Janelle's mom. Where's this other woman? Does anybody know what she looks like or what happened, or did she pass away? I mean, what happened? But they mentioned multiple times that his dad had 3 wives. Where's the other woman? Why are there no pictures of her? Why don't we talk about her? Why isn't she on TV? That's just interesting. She must have passed away or divorced him or something before the show started, because they sure don't mention him. Michael says it's never going to happen. Maybe I've held on to it for a while because of you. And Kody says, dude, I got to tell you this craziest thing. I had an epiphany just a little while ago. Our father was getting into plural marriage at the exact age I started getting out of it. Michael says, now you bring up dad. I mean, maybe I held on to plural marriage for a while because of dad too. Kody says, because you start out later in life with it, you might successfully pull it off. And he's right. Maybe if you do start out later in life with polygamy, you might pull it off, because it's probably less about the sex when you get married at a later age. It's more about taking care of each other. He says when you start out later in life, it's a different story. Michael says, I mean, he went to his grave with 3 wives, 3 women that were madly in love with him with all of his faults. How the hell did he do that? And he mentions 3 wives here too. Kody says, I think it's okay. Let's just think of this, and I'm not being sexist. And every time he says, I don't mean to be sexist, or I don't mean to be crass, he immediately follows it up with something sexist or crass. But he says, I think it was just sheer damn manliness. Yeah, don't you think dad had some kind of attraction? Because he was just, I mean, he was angry and he was mean, but he was also extremely masculine. Yeah, macho, and he was cowboy. And that guy in the rain with a cowboy hat leading a horse calls women to go hubba hubba. Janelle's mom told the story of falling in love with my dad. She thinks it was love, and I think it was just raw attraction. She saw a 53-year-old man busting his ass, and it turned her on. And I'm not trying to be crass. That was raw attraction. I don't know what it was. I'm telling you, because I hit an age where I don't think my wives were into me anymore. And he asked Michael, would you have been interested in polygamy if I hadn't have failed? Michael said, oh, you weren't the only one. I probably watched enough failures. Life is tough already. Maybe we don't need to make this any harder. So Michael says no. And going back, women are not that stupid. You know, I mean, it's not like we're just, oh my Lord, you're giving me the vapors. I mean, we can find a man sexually attractive and not lose ourselves. You know, we can control ourselves. And he's acting like just because his dad was good looking, Janelle's mom could not control herself. I'm sure Janelle's mom was much smarter than that. That is sexist. That whole paragraph was sexist. Caleb's asking Maddie if we have lights, and Maddie says, I don't know. They were in the garage. And Caleb asks Peyton to go check in the garage and see if there's like spools of lights. McKelty brings up that she's read the Duggars book, and Maddie says, was it good? And McKelty says, it was actually pretty cute. Maddie said, because he loves all his wives, right? And they're talking about Joe Dogger. Janelle says, one thing that the kids will sometimes bring to me is like, wow, polygamy really doesn't work. And that's a very common thing I hear from a lot of people. I've seen families that can do it, and it just really depends on the man's character. The one that we all sort of know of is Joe Dogger. And he has done such a good job managing his relationships with his wives. She said, yeah, that's where Kody failed. Kody says, before we ever went public, I knew Joe Dogger, and Joe had a really decent beginning of success. I think because his wives were all culturally homogenous. They were related. They understood plural marriage from perspective, and I think they've been very successful. So Kody's saying the only reason they're successful is because their wives were related, because Joe Dogger married 2 sisters. Like, he had nothing to do with that. Christine says, so Joe married Elena and Vicky forever ago, and then years and years later, they marry Vicky's sister. She says there's architects and there's firemen. Architects have a master plan. You don't deviate from that. And then there's firemen who just constantly putting out fires and rescuing. Kody was a fireman and Joe was an architect. And that's a good way to put it, because Kody just kind of flew by the seat of his pants and did what he wanted to. Joe probably has more set schedules and wants things to be fair, and that's why it worked. So basically, Kody was just wanting to do what he wanted to do, and he was selfish, and that's why it didn't work. Kody says, I think what happened with us is that I struggled to be devoted specifically to every single wife and vice versa. I don't think the wives were devoted to me or to each other as a whole. He's saying that his wives weren't devoted to him and they weren't devoted to each other. Not the fact that he spent 90% of his time at Robyn's house. I'll never say that. Caleb says, they decided to put the tree up in the front yard, which is a great idea. Do y'all remember, speaking of old movies, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation? They go and they find this tree in the middle of the woods and they bring it home, and the dad is just determined to put it in the middle of the living room, and it ends up taking up half the living room. So I think it was a good idea that they decided to put it in the front yard. And Janelle says, we can't be on the farm, so we're going to bring the farm to us this year. Peyton says, you guys are crazy. Who does this? And then so they put it up in the front yard, and Caleb says, this does not look ridiculous and redneck at all. Janelle says, I know it looks pretty. Maddie says, you're being sarcastic. Christine says, decorating is magical. It's a good memory. It's a good tradition. She says, I would like to be a part of the cutting down process next time. Caleb says, this is going to be a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. And Peyton says, that's a problem. Charlie Brown's tree was a terrible Christmas tree. Which it was, but that wasn't the point. You know, Janelle says what it symbolizes is the cool thing is that it's from our property, right? I think it's okay. We don't have a lot of confidence in this tree, but look, it's a symbol. Caleb is holding JoJo, and JoJo is touching the lights, and he says, oh, it looks pretty, doesn't it? And it's just sweet. Janelle says, I feel like kind of ties us to the property for this Christmas, because next Christmas and all the Christmases after, we will be on the farm. Robyn says, all right, I think we got everything we got to get out of here. Yeah, it was the last time in the house, last time in this kitchen, last time in this room. Kody says, hey, you guys, are you all right now that we're leaving? Are you sad? Brianna's over in the corner looking like she's in a coma, and she says, I don't know. Looking pretty sad here. I don't know. She seems like she's kind of depressed. Kody says, I'm just shaking off the remorse, just shaking it off, shaking off every Christmas, every holiday, every birthday, everything. It feels like sort of a poison in me all the time. So just this loss of it. Why are they so wrapped up in holidays? I don't understand. Thanksgiving, Christmas, that's the only thing you remember? You don't remember a day in June? I mean, why does it got to be Thanksgiving and Christmas haunting you? And then Kody launches into this speech that kind of makes everybody mad. He says, I'm going to tell you, I don't know what went wrong, but I know that I stirred up jealousy putting her in this house. My wives, in whatever way, couldn't handle that I was willing to fight so much to make sure that Robyn was safely kept. I'm sorry, there's things you do as a polygamist that you have to do to make another wife feel like, well, how's that fair for me? They couldn't handle that I was willing to fight so much to make sure that Robyn was safely kept. Because, oh my gosh. They couldn't handle the fact that you were with Robyn 100% of the time and that you were using their income to keep Robyn safely kept. I mean, I don't know what to say. We all know why they were upset. He knows why they're upset. I don't know why he's saying They couldn't handle that he was. It wasn't jealousy. It was the fact that you were using their resources and their time to do it. You were taking advantage of them. That's why they couldn't handle it. Anyway, Robyn says, well, we better get going. And she said, I did my own goodbye by myself because it's one of the last places that we were all here as a family. You wouldn't even let them in your freaking house. When were you all here as a family? And Robyn's crying. Then there's sad music. Next time on Sister Wives. And David is telling Janelle she needs to be on Farmers Only. Jen and Meri are talking about how they're going to talk to Kody. And Jen says, how much longer are we going to do this? How much longer until you realize that he's an ass? Go, Jen. And Meri says there shouldn't be any reason why we're not all four of us as equal owners. And Jen says, repeat after me. You do not control me. You don't control me. Comb your hair. Comb your hair. Jen's a great friend. Kody says, Brody's coming over. Apparently this is somebody that Aurora's been dating for a while. She's all excited and she's running to the door. I guess this is going to be their new storyline. Or she's over 20, acting like she's 12. Anyway, so that's the end of that. This is the part of the podcast where I come up with my own tell-all question. I think my question would be to Kody. 15 years ago, you met Robyn, and 15 years ago, Christine said that she hated polygamy. It was because she knew at that time that it wasn't going to be fair because you met Robyn, you fell in love with Robyn. And yeah, you loved your wife, but you weren't in love with them. You didn't want to spend time with them. Do you ever feel guilty about taking away that time from them? And now Christine had to struggle a little bit to find David, and now Meri's out there trying to find somebody. Do you ever feel any kind of guilt about taking away those last few years of their lives? That you could have released them and let them go and let them move on and you didn't? I mean, do you even realize what you did? What you did to these women? I mean, you didn't just abandon them, but you took something away when you wouldn't release them and when you wouldn't be 100% truthful and say, hey, this is going nowhere. It's never going to change. You need to go out there and find something that makes you happy. He just held them on the line forever. Do you realize that you did that? Do you realize what you've done? That would be my question for Kody. That's it for today. If you like my podcast, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to reach me, you can always reach me at redflagrewatch@gmail.com. Thank you for joining me today. See you next time. What happened when the blue and the red ship collided? What happened when the blue and the red ship collided? They were marooned. All right. See you next time.